Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Hello Gaming Nation, welcome to Season 2 of the Dice Ball Podcast live play series. I'm your host Ian Houlihan, better known as GM Hooli. This is an actual play podcast using the GeneSys Role Playing Game by Fantasy Flight Games. This season, our adventures will be set in the fantasy magepunk setting of Night's Edge, a setting developed by the host of the Dice Ball Podcast. If you wish to learn more about this setting, we recommend listening to episodes 6 and 7 of the Dice Ball Podcast, where we create and develop the world on the show. The setting is best described as dystopian, set on Luxon Tenebris, a world ravaged by a cataclysm that shattered the world, surrounding the planet in complete darkness and forcing its inhabitants to flee to the skies. Humankind is on the brink of extinction, and so the humans, both attuned and unblessed, must band together with their former foes, the werewolves, and those cursed by the horrors of the world below, the shade-touched, in order to survive. Living in gigantic floating city-states above the clouds, these unlikely allies use magic and airships to fight the creatures of the shadows on the Night's Edge. This is the second part of a multi-part story arc, so stay tuned to social media for future announcements by searching Dicepool Podcast or visiting us on the web at thedicepoolpodcast.com. In our previous episode, the heroes of our story came face to face with storm ravagers, bat-like creatures drawn into a swirling maelstrom from the shadow realm below. In this episode, we leave the dangers of the lightning-filled storms and arrive at Lakeport, home to our heroes and a place where their destinies are about to become embroiled in a scheme greater than themselves. So join us for Chapter 2 of The Night's Edge, Voyage of Calamity. Okay guys, so welcome back to the second episode. So we'll start by introducing each one of us. I'm GM Hurley, I'm the GM for this evening. Mike.
I am GM Huz, and I am playing Artimis Gristlemore. He is a werewolf berserker.
Right. Mutton.
Well, I'm GM Flano, and I am playing Jerrico Runetide, a Spell Slinger out of the Academy at Lakeport.
Mm-hmm. Caitlin.
I'm GM Caitlin, and I'm playing Jonah Bonnie, also known as just mainly as Bonnie, and she is a shade-touched sneaky sneak.
Which I think is going to be probably the official title for this particular career now.
Well, I think so, because I'm not calling her by anything else, so we're just going to have to change the rules to make it fit.
Right. And Madeline.
I'm PC Madeline, and I'm playing Anora Steelclaw, a attuned human, blind and raised by werewolves.
Nice. So what we'll do is just go around the table just to start us up. I'm going to ask you a bit of a question about your characters. We'll start with Caitlin's character. What is your character's most memorable moment?
So probably one of the most memorable moments for her was a night when all the crew were together, and there was lots of drinking going on, lots of games to be had, and she happened to out-drink and out-game Gregor, which is where the tension started to grow, because he had this macho personality that he was, top dog, and then this little nobody out of nowhere managed to outdrink him, and particularly being female on the ship as well, he did not like that.
No, but he would have been ropeable.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, incredibly intoxicated, but the next day he was ropeable. So having that whole event where everyone's drinking and having fun, but she was still kind of on the outside and still managed to win and beat them all. And so that's where some of that background's come from. Well, some of that tension between him and her.
Yep.
Who's better?
Mike, what was your character's most memorable moment?
Well, my character's most memorable moment was probably when he very first got the Calamity, and the crew was fairly fresh, and together they went down beneath the clouds because they caught wind of an old vault.
I was waiting for you to go an old wooden ship.
Old wooden ship. No, they caught wind of an old vault. It became a bit of an urban legend in the area that they were in at the time, and so there was a bit of a race to get this vault, ancient vault, floating beneath the clouds, down in the darkness, right on the cusp between our reality and the dark, inky reality. So, and at the end, there was a bit of a race to get down there. The Calamity was the first there, and everyone working together managed to breach into the vault, get the treasures within, and then resurface and sell it all, and make a bit of profit.
Cool.
And not so much the voyage was the most memorable part, but it was the first time the crew had done something fairly significant beyond harvesting lightning. So it was quite
awesome.
There was danger, there was escapades, there was action.
There was shenanigans. Nice.
Yes.
Very good. Madeline, what's your character's most memorable moment?
Anora's most memorable moment was when she was blinded as a child. She was alone and on some desolate floating island of some sort, and pirates came and saw her and thought she might have treasures or hidden valuables, and when she didn't give up any because she didn't have any, they blinded her.
Oh.
Yeah, but a ship came along, and they were a ship full of werewolves. They came and stopped the pirates, and they helped Anora, and they took her in as their own.
Wow. That's awful.
Yes.
I'm sure you want to get some sort of revenge on those pirates.
Well, they all died because the
did they?
werewolves got them.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah.
But that's also really cool, because that would be the first time that you found your pack.
Could also be why you have such loyalty with werewolves more than humans, because humans were blinded you, but werewolves saved you.
Interesting. Martin, your character, what's his most favourable moment, or memorable moment, should I say?
His most memorable moment is sitting at home when he was very young with his father, Papa Runetide. And he was telling him stories of the world below and what it once was, and describing to him the realm of shadows and things like that. The spooky kids stories.
Yeah, ghost stories. Yeah.
But he absolutely loved it and was so into this that after, later that night, after his dad had gone off to bed, he crept into his office and, went to the artifacts that he kept on his desk, because his father was a spell slinger as well.
Right.
And that's when he discovered his own affinity for magic, when he got a hold of one of the attuned items that his father kept there, and it caused a bit of distraction.
Oh.
But it's also when he knew that he wanted to join the academy. And,
Right. Interesting.
he knew what he wanted to do in life.
Very good. All right. So that gives a little bit more of a background for the characters. That's great. All right. So at our last episode, we ended arriving at Lakeport, which is the main hub of activity for a large number of lightning trawlers. It's quite a bustling port. There's probably enough for around about 20 ships or 20 lightning trawlers, amongst sort of other transports and things like that as well. As you've sort of coming in, the air is quite calm and peaceful. It's quite bustling when you arrive first thing in the morning. You've got this large wall which goes all the way around the city, but jutting out just past the main gates is where the port has been set up, and there's a bustling market which sort of rests before the port itself, and kind of between the port and the main central gates. The other thing that you notice as well, that Jonah, Bonnie, and Artemis are well and truly accustomed to this, but Jerrico and Anora not necessarily so much. Down below, where you have the plateau of the floating city, where there's this jagged sort of the rocks and whatever else, just below that, you can see that there is almost like a web or a crisscross of walkways and small buildings. Now, this particular area of Lakeport is called the Hive. The Hive predominantly has been created because the walls of the building, or the walls of the city, are actually magically attuned to have kept out the creatures of the shadow. That has had a short, sort of a small effect on the werewolves, a little bit, but certainly the ones that had the most effect are the Shade Touched. The Shade Touch basically get a burning sensation when they walk through for the first time. They can get accustomed to that, but they do get the sharp pain when they go through those walls, especially that sort of that front gate. Now, obviously, a lot of people don't like going through that process. So what happened is that the Shade Touch decided to create this almost this undercity, which, you know, if you fall off a walkway, you fall to your death. There's sort of, there's no nets or anything like that.
Which is okay for Shade Touch because you fall off the walkway and then teleport yourself back up again.
Correct.
That's why it's perfect for them.
Exactly right. But when it comes to humans, yeah, not so much.
More terrifying.
Maybe Shade Touch, that's not my character, because if any from the last episode, my teleportation...
That was under duress. I'm sure you'd do much better.
Oh, you're very kind, but it's not the case.
But you have managed to reform on the journey back. Yes, that was a bit of a... You kind of were left sort of not quite in the realm of reality. And
Higgledy-piggledy,
yes.
I think is the clinical definition.
That's a technical term.
Wibbly-wobbly?
Wibbly, yeah, timey-wimey.
All right, so at this stage, you can sort of see that, as I said, it kind of looks like a web, almost like a spider's web underneath the city as you come in. So you eventually come in to the port. So off to your starboard side, you can see this ship, which is a little bit larger than the Calamity. But you are familiar with it. It's you're friends with the captain of sorts, and it's the airship called the Lunar Weave.
Ooh, that's a nice name.
Makes me think of space spiders.
Okay. And is it unusual to see him here? It's not, I assume?
No, but what's unusual is you notice that they've taken a fairly extensive amount of damage.
Ooh.
That they look as though that they're in the midst of repairing.
And what was the captain's name?
The captain's name it's a female human who goes by the name of, you know her as Hilda Johansson. But her, the name that most people know her is Sister Moon.
Sister Moon?
Is she in a cult?
Well, I don't know.
With a name like that, she should if she doesn't. Missed opportunity.
You know, Artemis, that she's a former member of the Pilgrim Sisterhood.
Cult.
She's an so former member of the Pilgrim Sisterhood, which is they're effectively the only religious organisation which is in Knight's Edge.
Do I see? Is there? I'm assuming there's people working on it.
There's a lot of people. There's a lot
buzzing
of movement
about
on the deck of the ship,
Okay.
and you can sort of see that there is some familiar faces who you see on the deck of the ship. Captain Artemis knows that there is a fair amount of competition that goes on between the crew of the Calamity and that of the Lunar Weave. No more, of course, than between its captain and Captain Artemis himself. But Sister Moon is very much a no-nonsense type of character. She tells it how it is. and can be quite blunt, which may explain why her and Captain Artimis get along so well. But she's fairly old. She's probably in her 60s or thereabouts.
Okay.
Now, to give you a bit of an idea, as if she was an actress, she would be played by Helen Mirren.
Okay.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
Love Helen Mirren.
All right. Well, being a fellow captain and seeing that Sister Moon's ship is fairly beat up, Artemis will make his way over and track down Sister Moon. I imagine she won't be hard to find. She'll be on the ship and overseeing repairs.
Yep, absolutely. So you've brought the Calamity into dock.
Yes.
And people start sort of like unloading and loading and whatever else. So you sort of make your way. You're the first one off the ship and head on over to the Lunar Weave. I'll get back to you in a moment. So, Jerrico, what are you doing as soon as you arrive?
It's a very good question. He's still, reveling in what he saw out there, because this is like his first big trip beyond the clouds.
Although it was a little bit terrifying still. Don't forget that you did have the whole...
But he's invincible.
Well, apparently you took on a number of Stormweavers.
Took them all on. What are you talking about? The one person that's supposed to not be super fighty, and he kills everyone. We're just like, okay.
I can imagine
This is the world now.
I can imagine Jerrico thinks he's seen the worst of it. That's like
Yeah.
the worst
Oh, yeah.
that darkness can give. It's like,
And he can take it. So yeah, he thinks he's seen the worst of it, and he's ready to take on the world. Nothing can touch him. So he's going to go and get a drink.
Right. Okay, so how familiar is Jerrico with the Hive? Or is it more a case that you would go sort of beyond that? Because, I mean, there are bars in the marketplace as well.
He would go to the marketplace because he's got a good upbringing.
Right.
He's not nobility, but he's upper class. And he went to the academy and, So he doesn't slum it.
Right. Excellent.
I also imagine that because this is a bit of a different environment for your character, you're quite literally just following where the signs are pointing to.
Oh, yeah.
So you're looking at how everyone is dressed and then just following street signs versus going, I know exactly where I'm going to go. You're just going to follow whatever marketing pops up because that looks like your kind of
Exactly, but he feels like he can take on anything, so he's not worried about where he's going.
Cool. All right. So, Jonah Bonnie, what are you doing?
So I imagine that Jonah's probably going, because she would know the ship as well and some of the people that are on it. And if we visited this port before, there would be, she's more comfortable in this area because this is like the shade-touched area, this type of ship being in a shade-touched thing. She's going to be really interested in going, what's going on here? And how can I help? Even though people don't want her around, being bad luck, she still wants to try and help people. But in saying that, she also still doesn't like being off the ship per se, so she's gonna wrap herself up and kind of cover her face a little bit. So when she's going off ship, and also for some reason it gives her a bit of security when going through that kind of initial hive of lots of people kind of thing. So, but she's going to be interested in checking out that ship and seeing what's going on and what she can do to help. Okay.
So while you're sort of preparing yourself and you're, going to walk off the ship, walk off the Calamity. The Grigor, he almost sort of sees you headed towards that and picks up his pace to get before you, and you can see that he's carrying a number of large items, and he kind of sort of like stalls and gives you a bit of a grimace while he's walking down the plank to the port itself.
Do I recognise what he's holding?
It looks as though that he's holding some sort of a keg or something like that of beer or some sort of rum or something like that.
So he's trying to get in front of me, so he gets off the ship first.
That's his aim, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not actually going to. I'm not going to buy it because I also have the view of just teleporting and getting in front of him. But Jonah's just going to Jonah's just going to allow him to walk past, and she's just going to follow and staring in the back of his head while we walk off the ship together.
He kind of is. He's
feeling a bit triumphant, a little bit.
Exactly.
Passive aggressiveness.
So, right. So, Anora, now that you've got yourself out of the pod, what what are you doing now that you've arrived in port?
Anora is going to go and get some food.
Oh, okay. So off to the marketplace to go and get some...
Yes, she likes to try different foods and stuff, but mainly to go to the butchers and get a lot of different various sorts of meat.
Oh, okay.
Because the ship doesn't necessarily have all the meats that she was used to.
Right.
So she likes to go and get her own meat.
So given the fact that you were brought up by werewolves, you have a bit of a love of fresh meat, would that be fair?
Yep.
A predilection for...
Yeah, and she likes it sort of rare / blue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And she tears into it, uses her hand, no cutlery to be seen.
So, back on the ship. So we have Bonnie and Artemis. So you've walked on board. You've obviously, there's a lot of high activity, people taking back planks, ropes, tar-like substances in buckets, wax, oil, and a whole host of other materials of which to obviously repair the ship with. Of particular note, though, is several tears of around about 6 feet in length, which a number of sailors are currently stitching together. These tears appear along the starboard side of the upper envelope in the balloon sort of structure at the top of the ship. Right, so there's lots of activity going on board the ship at the moment. So what... you said that you were going to find the captain.
Yes.
You can see her. She's looking over some plans of the ship, obviously, and giving directions to people. I mean, they're pretty switched on. She has a person next to her who is dressed sort of all in white. A young woman, and you know her to be Gabrielle Kritz. Now, Gabrielle is a human of about 18 to 20 years of age, with dark hair and kind of alabaster skin. She does have a tattoo on the right side of her face in the shape of a crescent moon. Now, her clothing, as I mentioned, is very white. It's almost flawless, but as you get closer, you can see that there is a very elegant embroidery throughout, in an almost translucent thread, which looks very unusual. What Gabrielle is wearing, though, is a very stark contrast to that of the captain, who is wearing a naval-type uniform, which is a mixture of reds, maroons, and deep blood red, which Artemis knows is just the colouring itself is a bit of a throwback to her time in the Sisterhood. So now you know this young woman who's dressed in white as Gabrielle Kritz, and she is the first mate.
Okay, cool. Well, so Artemis will approach the two.
Yes?
Sister Moon, looks like you've had a hard voyage.
Ah, Artemis, I wasn't expecting you back so soon. I see that you've experienced some problems yourself.
Minor details, no major dramas.
Well, we had quite an experience in a bit of a run-in with some of your kind.
My kind? Oh, you mean wolves?
Yes, more the crew of Devoured, almost.
That's not my kind.
Well, no, it is not. But still, they have your plumage, so to speak.
Well, I'm assuming you took care of them?
We certainly did. It was a small ship, but as you can see, we took quite an extensive amount of damage. We will be out for some weeks, unfortunately.
And your wolves, they suffered none of the curse?
Well, Pavlov did. He restrained himself. He was quite professional in his dealings in the matter.
Well, Pavlov's a skilled operator, so no surprise there.
He's around here somewhere if you'd like to speak with him as well. Is there anything else I can help you with at all?
I just saw the damage, and I thought I would say hello.
Of course. But thank you for your concern. Which reminds me, we were given an employment opportunity that, unfortunately, given our current circumstance, we're not going to be able to continue. I was wondering, would you be interested in a job?
So they wouldn't say no, depending on the details, of course.
Well, I have few details. It's a gentleman by the name of Barnaby Chet that we had to meet. The details are here, and she sort of goes through her notes a little bit and then finds an envelope. And she pulls out the envelope and hands it to you. The first thing you notice on the envelope, obviously that the seal has been broken, but the seal which is on there is a little bit cracked, and it's hard to tell, but it looks fairly official. And if you want to go through, you can take a look at what's on the note.
Mm-hmm. Artemis will pass the note down to Bonnie, because you're staying up the deck with her.
Yeah, behind you, yeah.
I can imagine Artemis isn't a man who deals with like much in the terms of like paperwork and details. So he'll be like,
What do you read of this, Bonnie?
Do I recognise the seal on the back of it at all?
I'll get you to make a knowledge education roll.
And what would the difficulty be?
The difficulty for that is going to be 2 purple dice.
Caitlin roll, being a complete wash.
Right. So
it looks like a seal.
Nada.
So it doesn't look familiar, unfortunately.
No. So I open up the envelope and see what the job is.
So the job is quite finely handwritten. It looks as though that whoever has written this is very well educated. The letter itself is an invitation to meet with a Barnaby Chet at a place which is called the Western Cloud, which is a small bar or tavern which is within the walls of Lakeport.
And is that kind of like a central hub for a lot of people? Like, what kind of clientele go to?
Well, it's obviously on the western side of the main city. It's positioned out of the way and in a more sleazy part of town, away from the prying eyes of the Honor Guardians who patrol the city proper. Nobles, for example, would not be seen dead there unless, of course, they were engaging in perhaps illicit behaviour, or maybe even taking part in a secret rendezvous with a lover beneath their standing. They may be conducting shady deals with merchants, or even those who've come into the city from the Hive to conduct business. Mostly, though, the tavern is a place where airship captains and more respected members of their crew may frequent.
So perfect for our kind, in terms of like
for a shade touch.
For a shade touch, but also people who are on these types of ships and do their wheelings and dealings kind of thing. Because we're a bit on the outside as well.
It is a bit of a sailor's sort of tavern, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay, and that's all it says, is just meet me at this time and location?
It does, yes.
Yeah. So I'm just going to have a look at it and come up to the captain and just kind of like murmur to the captain without her hearing. Like, in case you're wanting details, there's no details here. We'll need to find out more at the Western Bar.
One of the things that you notice as well when you're talking to Artemis is that she has a complete look of disdain to you.
I'm pretty used to that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like at the point now where it's just, I would be surprised if someone didn't look at me that way.
Yep.
It still makes me like kind of hide underneath my what have I got over my head? I've got like a scarf kind of thing over covering my face. So it makes me hide a little bit more under that, and maybe like as I'm talking and going, there's little detail here. I will, as I'm saying that, I just kind of turn a little bit more.
I like to think that Artemis knows that Bonnie, being a shade touched, gets Sister Moon's goat a little tiny bit, and so that's why he, makes a show of displaying that Bonnie is equal crew member, and that's why he gives her decision of the job, and he knows that annoys her a little bit, so he takes a bit of enjoyment out of that.
Nice, cool.
I'll as I'm whispering, like, there's no details here, but I'd be interested to see what these people have in store for Sister Moon.
Well, I've got nothing else on today, so let's go check it out.
Very well.
Aye, aye.
I will get back to my duties then. You may take yourself and your crew.
You should leave the ship like this, you know. A holy ship for an holy woman.
Of course.
I tip my hat and then turn around and stalk off a ship.
She sort of watches you, sort of, again, with that level of disdain that she has sort of moved across from Bonnie to you. So maybe you've saved Bonnie a little bit of angst there. All right, so you walk off the ship, and you can see you see Anora coming towards you, and she has like this large sort of bag full of different assortments of foodstuffs.
Oh,
Are you heading back to the ship?
I am heading back to the ship, but I have eaten some rare meat.
Imagine you still have some like kind of like
That's
hanging
what,
outside
yeah,
of
that's
your
what I
mouth.
was thinking, like just all over me. I do not know what a napkin is.
What was the name of the bar we're going to?
Of the bar, the Western Cloud.
The Western Clouds?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is that where I've headed?
No, what you've just headed to a tavern, sort of
Yeah.
within the boundary of the harbour.
All right, so as I see Anora approach, Artemis will glance down at her, wave his arm.
Anora, come. We're going to the Western Clouds. We have a job offer there.
On my way, Captain. I'll just drop off these first.
Now where's that pretty boy human?
I think he's gone to go rival in his own success over at one of the other clubs.
I felt him heading towards the marketplace.
Should we try and intercept or let him enjoy his moment?
So Artemis, you want to go looking for Jerrico. He's going to bellow as loud as he can across the markets,
Right.
screaming at Jerrico.
And some random person just rocks up like, yes?
He doesn't respond quite, straight away, but eventually, he sort of sheepishly, walks up to the captain. Yes?
Western Clouds. We're going there. Come.
All right.
I imagine you kind of had like your eye set on this one particular place because of like the advertising. You're like, but pretties.
I imagine he got there already and has had one drink.
One sip.
You're already on your way back like, woo!
All right, so you head into the city proper. Now, the city is it's fairly busy because obviously in the Night's Edge, the populace of the world's how the world did have to try to shove themselves into each one of these floating cities wherever they possibly could during the cataclysm, and obviously there's nowhere else to expand. The human numbers were smaller than what you would expect, obviously, in a town of this sort of size. But over the last 100 or so years, they've obviously increased, so it is fairly populated. So you walk through the main city. One of the things that you notice as you're walking about is you can see that there is these guardsmen. They have this finely crafted armor, but it looks very, very old. The over the top of this sort of, it's almost like a bronze sort of hue, but it does have this strange, unusual sort of glow. The armor is also complemented by surcoats, like tabards type thing, in the familiar ivory of the royal palace, and it's emblazoned with the symbol of a griffin. Most of them have a griffin sort of in a grey colour, but you know that the colour denotes the rank and standing of each of these individuals. So you know that that these guys are these guardsmen are called the Honor Guardians. They are the lawkeepers, effectively, in Lakeport. And they only patrol in the main part of the city. Majority of their work is done in the harbour, but they do not go anywhere down in the hive.
I imagine as we see them kind of walking through, we're kind of like at the edge of like very close to some of the edge of the hive area. So when we're talking before about like when you fall kind of thing. So we're like precariously close to there, which I'm comfortable with. It's not a problem. But as we're walking, people like are almost kind of like making their way, kind of getting out of the way of the guards and kind of coming very close to us just to try and give them a wide berth. And we're getting pushed closer and closer to the edge of the railing, of the path. And as they do, one of them kind of pushes past Anara while she's sitting there eating meat and not really paying attention to what's going on around her because, as well, being around a lot of people isn't what you're used to. And as I kind of push past you, you kind of like lose your footing and then start to fall off the edge. And just as you're about to the edge of your foot is like off the edge of the hive, I just grab you and hold and put you back on stable footing. I say, "Watch your step, little one," as we keep walking.
All right, so you make your way through the main gate. This gate is monstrous. It's probably about, the height of the wall itself. They call it the Barrier of Hope, which is it's predominantly made of the same sort of coloured sandstone that the monolith that you can sort of see in the distance, which towers over the top of everything. It's about 500 feet high. It rests in the middle of the lake of Lakeport, and it can be seen from any point on Lakeport. So it's the same sort of colour. Jerrico, you know from your studies that the Barrier of Hope actually has a connection to the monolith that is in the middle of the lake. Now, the monolith in the middle of the lake, by the way, is called the Eighth. Okay. Which is, it was the eighth one of these monoliths that was discovered back in the old times when the world was all still in one piece. So these monoliths, the wall has this large gate which is through it. And the wall is around about 150 to 200 feet tall. And as you sort of make your way through, they've got huge big barrier gates, which are open, and you walk through. For Jerrico and Anora, you have no effect. You almost feel a little bit
safer.
You feel safer. You feel a connection to Lakeport. Artemis, you don't really feel anything. This is just sort of, it is what it is. Bonnie, however, you're used to it, so it's a easy check to walk through the door. You're used to this, but it's going to be a resilience roll.
I fail with 4 advantages.
With 4 advantages.
So no successes, no failures, but I don't succeed with 4 advantages.
Okay. So what happens is that you're used to this. You're not really affected as such, but just that burning sensation that goes across your entire body, you feel that it's sort of it's the same sort of if you have like a bad sunburn or something like that. So you get that sort of awful feeling. Because you've rolled enough advantages, it's not going to have any major effect. But yeah, it certainly makes you slightly uncomfortable for the moment.
Because this is a check to resist the effects of the wall, not to physically be able to pass through.
That's right. Yeah. So under normal circumstances, back during the war, that these magical attunement was placed into the wall itself, which effectively prevented from shadows from actually even entering in. In fact, it would incinerate them as soon as they walk past the walls itself, which obviously then has an effect on the shade touched. But in this sort of circumstance, it's not a bad thing. But yes.
I think as well, because she is so used to walking through these, the fact that this time has affected her a little bit more than what is usual has like doubly like unnerved her, and is like it's not normal that it's difficult for her at this point in time to be able to walk through that. And actually the fact that she's feeling it a little bit more just makes her feel even more uneasy and more hesitant about what's about to take place.
All right, so you make your way through the bustling and busy city to the location of where the Western Cloud is. You have to sort of go down quite a number of alleys to get to this place, but you pass occasional other sailors that are walking back, making their way back to their ships. You can see that a number of people are doing sort of some negotiations for different haulages and things like that.
I imagine as Bonnie's walking through, she sees other shade touched, and because they're kind of like, they stand out and everyone kind of like knows where they are, but they have this little hand gesture that they do as like across their chest. They hit their fist on one of their shoulders and then do two fingers across, so that's how they say hello and recognize that, friendly. So it's like a little passing moment between the two of them.
There you go.
And like when she sees another shade touched, or when another shade touched sees her.
Nice.
So you make your way into the main part of this particular tavern. It's a dive. It really is. The strong smell of hops is apparent when you first walk through the door. Stale beer and whatever else that has clearly never been cleared up. So you walk through and you're greeted by the tavern owner. You've probably been here before. The tavern owner, who surprisingly is a shade touched. That he sort of gives you that signal as you walk in to give you that familiarity, that sort of feeling of ease within this particular establishment. And you know that this particular gentleman is named Lucas Steinhold, which is an appropriate name for a barkeep, I would suggest, and says, usual table.
As he says that, I go up to the captain and I hand the captain back the envelope. Like, you might want to hold on to this because they're not expecting us. They're expecting Sister Moon.
Clever.
I know.
Well, as I see that go past, I'll say, can I make a check to figure out what the seal is?
Certainly.
Because now I've seen it be passed around.
Mm-hmm. So knowledge education roll. You only caught a brief look at it, so you can have a setback die for that. But it's just an average check, so 2 purple.
So I failed that with a threat. So it's a pretty elusive sort of seal. Not something I've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, you probably didn't get a good look at it while it was going past anyway. So,
and one of those fails came from the...
there you go.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, so you're ushered by one of the barmaids who goes along and she wipes down the bench of the table that you normally sit at, which is a small corner booth, and she sort of says, "Can I take your orders?"
I imagine this place, because it is a sailor's tavern. Yep. I imagine they do the pints of ale and beer and whatnot. They also do little mini kegs.
Okay.
That they pull out, they bring out and chuck down on the table.
Yep.
So Artemis will ask for one of the mini kegs to be brought to the table.
Meanwhile, you've asked for it, but the bartender who already knows who I am, because I'm just going to imagine that, Western Side, Shade Touched, we know each other, and I know a little bit about this, that maybe it's a place that I frequent. So when he says usual table, he's already on his way with the beer keg,
Perhaps
ready, waiting for us.
He teleports to the table.
Yes.
With the beer keg.
So you go, one keg for the tape, poof, already there.
That was quick.
We like to give quick service at this place. And he sort of like places it on the bench.
That's why it's one of my favourite places here. The service is exceptionally quick.
So how was the trip?
It was pretty uneventful, to be honest.
Oh, that's a shame. I was hoping for some stories, perhaps.
Just some run-ins with storm ravages. Nothing overly exciting.
No, only storm ravages.
Jerrico's like, what are you talking about? That was amazing.
Well, the boy here, he thinks he had a challenge, pointing to Jerrico.
Challenge? Oh, they were easy.
How many were there?
There was at least 6.
And you survived?
Yeah, I killed 3 of them myself.
Oh, look, the keg's on the house.
Lucas, I just wanted to let you know we're actually expecting someone who's not expecting us.
Bet you weren't expecting that.
That makes no sense.
Yeah.
But I think I've got what you mean. Look, have you got a name?
Artemis opens the scroll because he's forgotten by now. And what was the name on it again?
It was Barnaby Chet.
Barnaby Chet. All right. Barnaby Chet. Know the man?
Not really familiar with him. Do you know what he looks like?
No.
I'm assuming a human. So pink and fleshy.
He sort of like looks around the room in the tavern, and there's a number of humans and whatever else. And at this point, you notice that over in a dark corner, you swore that you looked there before, but this person sort of almost looks as though that he's appeared out of nowhere, and he sort of like raises a hand. He has a small glass with a what looks like some sort of fine whiskey. You can tell by the colour. You've done enough drinking in your time. And he's quite well dressed.
Artemis will stand from the table and he'll point to Barnaby. Barnaby, here! And beckon him over.
I'm already filling a glass from the keg.
So he nonchalantly sort of gets up very casually and moves towards you. The bartender, the barkeep says, I'll leave it to you then. I'll hear about more of this story later on, Jerrico. I want to know about this.
Oh, and you'll hear about it.
Oh, good. And he sort of he makes his way away back to tend to his duties on the bar. When this young, very wiry, pale-skinned gentleman comes up to the group of you and says, "So, may I pull up a chair?"
Be my guest.
And he pulls up a chair from a nearby table and sits at the head of the booth. You were looking for me?
Barnaby, right?
You would be correct.
Got a job for Sister Moon.
Ah, is there a problem?
Her ship is worse for wear, so she sent us on her behalf.
And I present the scroll and paperwork to him.
Right. He takes a look at it. So, you didn't steal this by any chance?
Steal? We wouldn't steal anything.
And I think you know Sister Moon better than that, otherwise you wouldn't have asked her for a job.
Listen here, boy. I don't steal anything. At all.
No, you seem to come across as someone that would take.
Exactly. I'm glad you're on the same level as me. Now, details.
Very well. I have a need that I need attended to. But it's one that will take you below the clouds.
Pays well then, I assume.
You would be correct. It pays quite well.
How much are we looking at?
Let us just say that you will be well compensated. I would be happy to pay you 2,000 gold now. And once you return with what it is that we're after, you would be compensated with another 1,000 gold.
Now, does that include running expenses? You know things down the shade can be pretty...
Harry.
That's the word.
As I pointedly say, looking at the actual werewolf.
We could include that, perhaps.
Seems pretty good, Captain.
It does. But the captain doesn't get up easily.
Captain doesn't give up so easily.
2,000 now. Expenses, 2,000 when we arrive. If you're offering that much now, you're willing to pay much more.
I'm thinking a negotiation check is probably appropriate
Alrighty.
in this sort of circumstance.
Now, this may surprise listeners when they hear Artemis's negotiation.
Right.
He is rolling 3 yellow for negotiation.
Wow.
He knows how to run a ship and negotiate contracts. He's been doing this a while.
That's why he's the captain.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right,
Captain.
So this gentleman's negotiation is fairly impressive. So it's going to be 2 reds and a purple.
Okay. Any setbacks, stuff like that?
Based on
Well, we're not the crew that he was expecting.
Yeah.
No, that is true. So I'm going to give you 2 setback die for that.
Can we get some boosts in there somehow? I'm going to fish for a boost.
He doesn't have very many other options, considering
yeah.
he's not like he's got...
outnumbered as well.
And you're still gnawing on raw meat.
While staring at him with blind eyes.
Well, that's a good point. His back's up against the wall a little tiny bit.
A little bit.
Got many options, so maybe a boost dice for that?
I'm thinking a boost die sounds good.
Go.
I think that's, yeah.
Pretty simple. Let's do. Oh,
You shouldn't be... I didn't see that boost there.
It is a net result of 1 success.
And that's all that you needed.
There we
So he agrees to your demands for an additional 1,000 gold at the end.
Yep.
And he shakes your hand on the arrangement. You give him your large paw. It's at this point that you notice... Actually... Yes, you do notice that as he sort of moves his hand, there is a slight wave of that sort of wispy blackness that you are used to with Jonah.
Okay.
So shade touched.
Now, the other thing as well that you notice, what he's wearing is actually quite... it's quite well presented. It's fairly well off. But you do notice that he also has a lapel type thing on his...
Like a lapel pin?
Like a pin, which seems to be in the same sort of shape as the seal on the letter is.
Now that I've got a better look at it, could I have another go at figuring out
certainly
what
can.
house this is? Or
Yep.
You've had time to study it.
Definitely.
And I think as well, the fact that he's a shade touched as well could add a boost to your check, because there wouldn't be a lot of royal houses or things like that would tolerate that kind of thing. So that could possibly reduce the likelihood of who you'd actually be cycling through in terms of who it is.
Probably more, and to be honest, probably more also a setback die, because that's not very well known. That's not something that you'd make public.
So I'm still at 1 net setback die.
So you are at 1 setback die.
No
for
boost?
That. Yes. Well, what I would suggest as far as the boost die, that definitely a boost die because you've had a little bit more time during that conversation to sort of rack your brain. You've had a little bit more time.
All right, here we go. I know. However, I do have 2 setback, but I have 2 threats. Sorry, but I do have 3 successes.
Right. Okay. So you do know that the symbol, which is on the seal as well as his lapel, is the symbol of Theresa.
Oh.
Now, it's a good time to update listeners at home of what Theresa is. It is this first city, well, the only city so far, well, first major city-state to sink below the clouds. And doing so created a fault in
the protections saving the cities from the shadow.
Correct.
It was. It had one of the monoliths on it, which was one of the major defenses.
The leader or the ruler of Theresa, Zelria, was the only person of really any power to survive that, and she's been desperately seeking out means to form a coalition and unite everyone together to try and prevent this from happening again in the future. There's a little bit of a side for the listeners so they know what's going on.
So yes, which is quite unusual because you don't know that she was working with somebody who was shade touched, and this sort of is quite off-putting. In actual fact,
Or asking jobs of people like us.
I keep it to myself though at this point, and I'll take the captain aside once this meeting's over.
Certainly. So he says, he continues, what I would like is for you to... the reason why that the amount is such quite a substantial amount of gold to make your way here is I need you to go to Shade Moon. my employer has a need of a particular item that Octavius Magnuson has agreed to part with. But he requires a crew of his own to perform a certain task, should I say.
So I guess now is when we discuss if our characters have been to Shade Moon before or not.
Shade Moon was my second home, so
Well, I've definitely not been there.
From memory, wasn't Shade Moon where Bonnie met Artemis in his ship? So us two have definitely been there.
I have not, but you may have.
Anora, you may have been there, yeah.
Yes, with my previous crew.
Definitely.
It's everyone but me.
I'd hearing the name Shade Moon and Octavius, Artemis will put his hand on Jerrico's shoulder and say, "Now the real adventure begins, boy."
Nothing I can't handle. With a bit of a slur to his voice because he's on his third drink by now.
Now, for the listeners at home, Martin, would you like to go through what Shade Moon actually is?
Shade Moon is it's a shadow port run by and predominantly occupied by Shadow Touched. The leader is Octavius Magnuson, the most well-known Shade Touched on the planet.
No, he was a half-breed.
Oh, he is a half-breed, isn't he? He's more than just a Shade Touch. He is something else. But he controls a lot of power with this port, which is essentially, what is it, like a big rock?
It's a spherical mass made up of like all chunks of the planet that once was. So it's all tethered together by like, infrastructure.
Yeah, bridges and all sorts of things.
So imagine someone getting like a stone ball and crushing it in their hand, and then still forming the spherical shape with whatever's left.
But it doesn't have any protections like these major cities does, and its movement is sort of erratic, so it's hard to find, which is where part of his strength comes from.
Because it dwells within the clouds. And
Yes.
dips in and out of the shade and comes up every now and then and goes down every now and then.
But Magnuson has like a deal with the shadows, doesn't he, to get left alone?
Well, we're not quite sure about that.
We don't know that. That's some of the rumours that surround
That's
him.
certainly a rumour. But how else could he survive, or how else could Shade Moon actually survive living in the Shadow Realm?
But he also, so he that area is the source of all sorts of shady deals and things like that, and all of the nefarious goings on around the place.
You've got all, it's home for like all other oddball species and whatnot that may exist in the world. Like you've got obviously the wolves and
anyone
and
is
humans.
allowed to tread there.
Exactly. Then you have other weird sort of creatures that who knows where they're from the old world, from below, who knows. They also call that place home. So a lot of weird going ons go on there.
All right, so you're well and truly aware of, certainly Bonnie and Artemis are aware of the significance of Shade Moon. What sort of connection there is, perhaps, with, you guys don't know at this point, Bonnie, Anora and Artemis, you don't know about the connection between Theresa, because at this point you don't know what this particular pin or the seal is.
it's almost kind of as well, because our characters have been to Shade Moon, we know it, we know who Octavius is, it's kind of like, oh, this is going to be easy money for us, considering it, because this guy probably doesn't, he's like, oh, Shade Moon, it's all this really like dark, scary place, so he's like 2,000 gold there on the way back, and we're just like, easy money,
It's like
no worries.
Shade Moon's like going home.
Exactly. So we're just like, this is going to be a super simple, easy job. Isn't it?
Jerrico will pipe up, though, at this point, and he'll say, Barnaby, do you know what Octavius wants us to do?
He was less than forthcoming, should I say, on what he was requiring. But it was a task that was suitable to Sister Moon and her crew, which I'm hoping you will still be capable of attending to, but I am unsure what he had in mind.
Honestly, I'm surprised the man wanted Sister Moon to go to the Shade Moon because she gets uneasy around one Shade touched. I can't imagine how well she would handle a population of them.
Yes, but she has a certain skill set, should we say.
Honestly, he should have just come to us first.
He may do in the future after this mission, boy.
It is true. It depends on how well you survive.
Not creepy at all.
Speak there, bro.
So, yes, he sort of looks around the table and says, good luck. And he then produces from a pouch. Well, you think from a pouch, you're not quite sure. He just sort of like leans down to the table and sort of there's probably a body recognizes a sort of like a popping sound where he's perhaps teleported away or had something teleported to him, giving sort of an indication that he's a fairly powerful Shade touched.
Yeah.
And he presents a letter of introduction, again with the seal of Theresa, along with the pouch of coins or stones as they're called in this world, places them on the table and pushes it towards Captain Artimis. You will need this. It is a letter of introduction from my employer. Present this to Octavius when you arrive. He's not expecting you, and I would not wish anything untowards to happen to you. You have a job to do after all, and my employer does not like to be disappointed. So there you go. So at this point, you have now been given this mission from Barnaby, and your first task is to go to the Shade Moon. Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Chapter 2 of this second season of the Dice Ball Podcast live play series. We all here at the podcast hope that you've enjoyed listening to it as much as we've had creating it. So our crew, led by Werewolf Berserker Captain Artimis Gristlemore, are now tasked to travel below the clouds to meet with the mysterious underworld figure of Octavius Magnuson. Who is Barnaby Chet, the Shade Touch that met with our heroes, really? What is his connection to Theresa? And what harrowing dangers face our heroes below the clouds on their journey to Shade Moon? Find out the answer to these questions and more when the Dice Ball Podcast Live Play Edition returns for Chapter 3 of Night's Edge, Voyage of Calamity. My thanks go to my players Caitlin, Martin, Michael and Madeline. It literally was not possible without them. If you have any feedback on our setting or this episode, you can send us a review via iTunes, on Facebook, or send us an email to info@thediceballpodcast.com. I'm GM Hurley. Thanks for listening, and remember, the Dice Ball Podcast, where adventure is just a roll away. The Dice Ball Podcast is a proud member of the D20 Radio Network. For more information about the network, visit d20radio.com. This podcast is a fan-generated adventure and is not affiliated with Fantasy Flight Games. Content of this podcast remains the property of the Dice Ball Podcast and is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. The GeneSys Role Playing Game, logo and rules content remain the property of Fantasy Flight Games. Music supplied by Brandon Fichter and Toby Wheatley.